I've always thought that casting is one of the most important and most overlooked aspects of low-budget film productions. Crews spend so much time and money on the camera and the lighting and the sound departments, but if you cast the wrong actors, then none of that is gonna matter. I was lucky enough to get to talk about this and a lot more with my friend Allie, who's an amazing casting director that I was fortunate enough to work with on my last feature film, Kendra and Beth. That film was the first time that I had worked with a casting director, and it really opened my eyes to an entire new world when it comes to filmmaking. Allie was so creative and talented, and through her casting made the film 100 times better, but she also made a part of the process, which can ordinarily be stressful and difficult, really fun to work on. I really think that filmmakers as well as actors can learn a lot from what she has to say. So without further ado, I'm excited to present our conversation. Do you think your background as an actor helps inform the way that you approach casting? And is that pretty common for most casting directors to have a background in acting, or is that pretty rare?
I think it's super common, especially, again, you can't, to my knowledge, it might be different these days, but you can't major in casting. There's nowhere to really go study it. So I think most casting directors, at least like the greats, the old schools that we all know so well, the big offices, I think they all fell into it from something else. Because it's still, in the grand scheme of like Hollywood, it's still a relatively new profession. And I think most of us were actors, I would say. I don't know that factually. Somebody can fact check me, but I'm pretty sure it's true. And I do think it informs what I do every day. In fact, I think it's one of the things that makes me good at this is, understanding how to read a script and see it from an actor's perspective, understanding how to like help direct and give notes in sessions and stuff.
I mean, part of the reason I wanted to chat with you is because I feel like casting is one of the more like misunderstood and overlooked parts of filmmaking, especially indie filmmaking. So I'm curious to hear what you think a casting director's role in a film production is.
I will always advocate for hiring a casting director on your project, no matter how small it is, for better or worse. Even on the lowest budget indie project, we legitimize your film in a way you cannot just casting it yourself. There is a big difference between a breakdown for a project being released with my name on it versus someone who's not a casting director. Because I have like pre-existing relationships with reps, pre-existing relationships with other actors. Like we have a shorthand. There's, it instills confidence in people to see that you have a casting director on your project. And frankly, I think, people see that and think, okay, cool, this is a real thing. So there's that on top of like, I think it's, especially in film, it doesn't hurt to have collaborators on your script. Like it doesn't hurt to have new eyes on it. So many times I read a script and my initial ideas for the characters are a little bit different from what the filmmaker had in mind, but they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. I never would have thought of that person. Like that is only, even if we don't end up going that direction, it's like bringing another creative brain into the process. And I think that's only valuable.
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting that you said that because I was going to also ask you, I feel like a lot of times when people make a low budget movie, they assume they don't have enough money for a casting director or their film isn't big enough for a casting director. And so what do you say to filmmakers who are making, stuff on a shoestring who maybe think that it's out of their league?
I can't speak for everyone, but particularly for me, and a lot of indie casting directors, again, like my mantra is sort of like no project is too small, especially if I read the script and resonate with it. That's what's most important to me, is like I want to be working on stuff that inspires me, that I feel like is worthwhile, that I feel like deserves to be out there. And while we're in like this, era of our industry, where a lot of emphasis, and for good reason, is being placed on like elevating new voices and diversity and getting people out there who aren't somebody's grandchild. It's, as a casting person, it's sort of part of my, I don't know, personal mission in a way, that like, okay, how can I, a casting director who mostly works on like low budget, independent, kind of scrappy projects, how can I positively contribute to that? And I genuinely think the best way I can is to work with that student filmmaker who can't pay me a lot, but has a script that I think is really promising. And people who I've done their shorts and this is their first feature, and no, it's not going to be a cash cow by any means, but like, I believe in their work, and I have something that helps them and that I can help connect them to actors and reps and get like really cool people on their project that hopefully helps place more eyeballs on it. I think that is one of the best things I can be doing to sort of do my part in diversifying our business and making sure people who don't have a lot of films on streaming services or stuff that's gone through festivals get their stuff pushed through. That's, at least in this chapter of my career, that's what I'm really trying to like intentionally focus on, is, putting my name on things that like I'm passionate about. And if I'm passionate about something, I mean, I don't want to say I'm going to do it for free. I don't believe in working for free. None of you should. But I don't want money to ever be the reason I don't work on something that I'm excited about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and speaking of these indie projects, I'm sure that you come across and watch a lot of low budget indie movies that maybe didn't use a casting director. And so I guess my questions are, A, do you think that it's obvious when that's the case? And B, are there like telltale signs that a project didn't use a casting director other than there not being one in the credits?
I do think generally, yes, you can tell. I also am biased and happen to have a really good eye for it. But one thing I don't think we all discuss a lot about a casting director and their role and kind of having their eyes and ears on something is building out the ensemble and making sure it's cohesive. I'm thinking there are a few films on my own resume where it's like there were a handful of roles that the team had put their friends into or whatnot, and whatever, that is your prerogative. It is your project. Sometimes you can just tell like who was a friend of a friend who's in the film, and like who like auditioned for it and went through the paces because they kind of seem to match up better with everyone else. So I don't know. I think that's really important. I'm not saying the world has to think that's important, but I do think there is something to say about creating an ensemble in a project that's cohesive and, not having a random person in there that's like distracting almost, or, just doesn't seem to like fit the picture.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I think I have probably a harder time than you of pinpointing when it's the case, but I think you see a lot of movies, especially low budget movies, and the film kind of falls flat, or there's just like so much stuff that isn't working. And I think a lot of the times it's because of casting. And like, if you cast wrongly, poorly, then there's only so far you can take the quality of the film. And so even if you shoot on a red and you have great locations and blah, 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 like your film's only going to be so good.
Right. Those things do not fix the person who won this walk-on role on your Kickstarter. Like, I'm sorry, they just don't, So find another strategy, in my opinion.
Kickstarter is maybe not the best venue for casting. So when you take on a new project, and you work with the director, what kind of things are you looking for?
My rule of thumb is when I read a script, I ask myself, is anybody else doing this, like making this film? And if the answer is no, chances are I probably want to do it. Like I'm really interested in making films that don't exist. And I think, in this kind of independent space, that's where those people are. And that's why I've lived here for so long, is because I love a character study. And I think actors do too. And I think that's sort of where I've found my niche. Is I've learned really good actors that sometimes directors and writers would think, well, we'll never get them, want to do your project when you've written a character they've never seen before or never gotten to play before. And that's the puzzle, is, finding someone who wants to do your film, and the reason can't be money. Normally there are obviously certain budget levels where it's like, yeah, even I'm doing it for the money. But I love directors and writers and writer directors. I work with a lot of writer directors, you being one, who write like really fantastic characters, really fantastic dialogue. Like, I like reading a script and feeling like, okay, someone's going to be really excited to play this part. And that is what I think keeps me going and energized about a project, is, just knowing what it could potentially do for somebody's career. And yeah.
Well, circling back to something you just said, I think when we worked together, one of my favorite parts was you really pushed me to be more ambitious with my casting ideas. And so I was wondering, do you think that it's easier for filmmakers to cast bigger or more famous actors than they think it is?
I don't want to say that, but again, I think it's another reason you partner with a casting director, because we have sort of a pulse on like what exciting actors are looking for. Like, I don't want to say just anyone will, but I may know, okay, so I have randomly cast 3 or 4 features in the state of Minnesota, yours being one. So, I'm not going to say just anyone will want to play the lead, but there may be an A-list actor out there that I happen to know is from the Twin Cities area, is dying to go back home to do a feature. And so that may be someone I pitch to you if they're right for a role in your film. And it's like, is this like in the realm of reality? Well, yeah, it is, because we know stuff like that. We know, okay, forget the money. This is attractive to the actor because they've been it's been important to them to go, shoot something in their hometown, boost the local artistic economy, whatever, and it could be a number of things like that. It could be an actor who normally is like, I don't know, the sidekick, hilarious bit part friend that's been on a bunch of amazing shows, is super recognizable, and is specifically looking to finally lead a project. It's like, we know who those people are and kind of how to strategically build them into our lists and present that to filmmakers. So like, ambitious, yes. I will also say, and this is something I've been saying to myself too, recently, is you just never know who's going to love your work. You don't. And I think for filmmakers, it's really easy to just write people off and be like, well, so-and-so will never want to do it. This agent's not going to give this the time of day. And I want to read, I'm not going to, I think I sent to a director I'm currently working with on a feature last week, I sent him a text that was like, we have got to stop worrying what reps think or what agents think. At the end of the day, that does not matter. It's whether this actor responds to it or not. That's what counts. Like, we have to get out of our own way. We need to stop thinking about, what this rep is inevitably going to say or inevitably going to counter with, because that's going to happen no matter what. We focus on, if the actor wants to do it, that's it. Like, we're going to find a way. So yes, ambitious, I think, reach for the stars strategically is what I would say to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I meant maybe more so is like if you have a role that's maybe like smaller or bigger, not to just say, oh, I'll just cast, like you said, my friend or somebody from the Kickstarter. It's like, no, this is like a good role. You should find the right actor, and maybe that person is somebody you didn't think you could get.
Oh, totally. Because it's all how you market things. Smaller roles, if the character is rich, that's attractive in a whole other way, because we can present that to somebody really cool, maybe recognizable, who's willing to do it. They may not have 3 weeks to go shoot a low budget indie, but they have 2 days to come play this one really cool part. And then awesome, you have this actor with name value attached to your film. It doesn't matter how big or small the role is. What matters is like they like it. So that's obviously a whole other strategy in casting and building out your ensemble. Is sometimes the smaller parts are the ones that you actually can kind of stick, recognizable people into.
Well, I wanted to ask you, how important do you think it is for a film to cast a name actor in their movie?
I think I tweeted this a few years ago. If there's not a version of your film that can be successful without celebrities in it, it's probably not worth making. Which is a bold statement. I get it. That is a bold statement, but it is how I feel. It's like good is good. And even if you don't have recognizable talent, I do believe, with like the tiniest part of my jaded being, I do believe that good is good and people will recognize that. Like, there will be a programmer out there at some festival who sees it and is like, hell yeah, this is worthwhile. Like, even if it doesn't have a single name, because that has happened time and time again. And again, I'm thinking of a film by a client of mine before we ever worked together that like went to Sundance and did really well. Again, you wouldn't know a soul in it, and that's just because it was good without it. It didn't need that. So no, I don't think it's important. A financier will tell you differently, but I'm not one of those, nor do I know how they come up with their numbers. It is absurd.
Well, what do you think are some of the most common mistakes that directors make when it comes to casting?
Putting actors through too many paces is a little bit of a buzzkill. I think, and that's something that's one of the reasons why I think Kendra and Beth, we were so successful in the casting, is for all the principal roles. We did direct offers, because you know your stuff, and you trust people with a repertoire, it's not fun to put somebody through an audition and 4 callbacks for something that's ultimately going to be paying them like $300 a day. Like, come on. I think it makes for like really good energy and juju when, you make direct offers to people who, again, even if they're not like celebrities, but someone with enough work that you can watch and say they can do this, and I think that takes a really smart director. It takes somebody who like pays attention and stays on top of everything that's coming out, both in the feature world and on TV, of like keeping track of actors' body of work. I think a lot of people will just pass. You can get someone who might be like the exact right person for your film if you just make them an offer, because that's always just like a nice gesture and ego stroke, um, versus like having them audition and jump through hoops.
So if you send a direct offer to an actor versus saying, hey, can they send a self tape? Like, do they approach it in a different way? Is it more appealing? I mean, you said it's more appealing, but is it something like, oh, I'll consider this because they sent me a direct offer versus like, oh, I don't want to send a self tape for an indie film?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like your chances of getting someone are always going to be higher. Like if it's an actor you want, then just make the offer. Like don't put them through the paces when you already know they can do it. You already think you want them. Like if that's your top choice, like make it official. And like that again, that's always just like such a nice gesture and exciting thing as an actor to receive that. Again, it's an ego stroke. And I think, not to like, you know, disclose all my tricks and secrets, but I have found like sometimes deal with like a lot less negotiating, because it's flattering. It's flattering and it's exciting to just have someone say, I really like you. I want you to do this. Here's an offer, versus, you know, would you tape for this?
I'm curious because I feel like casting directors' jobs are kind of half artistic, creative, talking to actors, working with actors, but then there's also the whole side of working with or dealing with agents and managers. And I'm curious how you juggle both sides of that coin.
I am a personality hire by birth. So I have that. I do have that going for me, is that, people, no matter who you are, actor, rep, random person, CAA, you probably want to drink with me. And so that is good. In my specific scenario, it's I think I navigate people pretty well. I also at this point in my career, I'm fortunate in that like a lot of the agents like at the big agencies right now were assistants when I was like coming up. So like that's really nice. It's really nice to see like the people I was in the trenches with, like working all hours of the night and always being on the phone with, are being rightfully promoted into like the big positions. So on the whole, I don't run into a bunch of issues speaking with agents and managers, because at this point, a lot of them are my friends, and have always been my friends. But now, my friends aren't the assistant anymore. I guess this is where I also say, always be nice to the assistant. You're crazy if you don't. At any
Absolutely.
company, always be nice to the assistant. I don't know why people don't do that, but I also have like a slight foot in both worlds because I'm married to an actor. So naturally I know a lot of them. And I was an actor before I did this. So, it's a very, the community is very blended in that way. And I pretend that actors annoy me, but I wouldn't do this if I loved them. I wouldn't do this. I would not do this if I didn't love them. And if, watching talented people make exciting stories come to life, if I wouldn't do this if I didn't love that. And I wouldn't do this if I didn't, personally get super excited by helping people build their careers. Like that brings me so much joy. And I'm only seeking joy in my life right now. So really, I promise you, I would not be doing this if I didn't like it just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, like people are people. And I had to like come to that, realization in my own way. I had to endure my own personal trauma to fully understand, like, we're all human. So like, why am I scared of getting on the phone with this random manager. Like, get over yourself, Allie. Like, we're all, it's like in any time, there's a lot, even before so much of our work was like virtual and hybrid, even before that, most of the time I was communicating with agents all day, but it was on the phone and email. Like, rarely are we in the same room. So I don't know. I think I used to be like really intimidated, like, oh well, they work at WME. Like, what am I gonna do? And here's the deal. Most of the time when I met these people in person that I had only ever like emailed with or talked to on the phone, I meet them in person at the RDOs or an opening or whatever. I have one of two realizations. One, oh, you're really cool. Like, we would be friends in real life. Get over yourself, Allie. Or two, like, you are so stupid. I do not care. Like, it just doesn't matter anymore. So it's like people are people at the end of the day.
No, I mean that also brings up a great point that I think is maybe one of the biggest pros of working with a casting director is sort of minimizing the amount that a filmmaker has to deal with agents and managers, which I think can be really intimidating and can be a nightmare. So I was very grateful when we worked together. You seemed to be incredibly proficient and did a very good job of sort of insulating me from anything that might be going on the other side of the table. So if for no other reason, then you don't have to talk to agents and managers quite as much. I think it's great.
No, anything to reduce anxiety in a very anxiety inducing situation, which is making a film. Why do we do it? But yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm happy to be that person, because also, like, it's just their job, like it is their job, and I get it. I respect that. It's their job, but I understand, like, how frustrating, unpleasant, terrifying that can be. So happy to be that person.
On the flip side, talking about actors, are there things that really stand out when an actor auditions or does a self tape?
I can tell when somebody did not take the time to like read the full script. And I try my best, especially in this time where most of our auditions are at least first round via self tape. I do my best to give people an ample amount of time to put that tape together, and I include a full script. And I encourage actors, in my message to them, like, hey, please read this if you can. Like, understanding what is happening contextually is only going to help you. You're just going to do better work if you have read this script. It definitely, the people who really took the time to like prep for their audition always get noticed. And you can always tell. You can always tell when somebody has prepared well for something. That goes in with my next, which is like, follow instructions, which again just seems basic, seems like common knowledge. You would be stunned. You would simply be stunned. Like, who still won't? And I will also say the other side of that, and this is not popular, people don't like it. I think some actors are really good at making tapes. And that is why, if it's not someone whose work well, if we're not talking about like a known actor or kind of like a name, I will always advocate for some sort of like in-person callback or meeting if they're, on your shortlist for the role, because I can't tell you how many people just like make really good tapes these days, because of course they do. It's been pounded in your head for the past like 5 years. But then don't take direction well, or don't don't understand like the arc of the character or whatever. It's like they worked really hard and made one really good tape, and that is a talent, and good for you. That is not what makes a good film, though. So, if especially if it's like a co-star size character that's going to be in one scene and you do it really well on tape, that's awesome. Great, hired. But I mean, if it's someone who's going to be on set with you for 2 to 4 weeks, like leading a film, it's like I really, really advocate for getting in the room with that person or getting on Zoom with them at the very least, doing the sides again, shooting them some direction, and just like an overall vibe check. Because I've also so many times met the person we thought we wanted from the tapes. We meet in person or on Zoom, and it's like, okay, well, thank God we met them because we cannot bring this person for set, like you don't know.
So besides being professional and reading the instructions, do you think that there are any things that actors can do in order to book more or to increase their chances of landing a role?
Those are the big ones. I mean, if we're being like really, really honest, like if you want to be doing TV, you almost have to have an agent. Like, I don't even want to lie about that. Like, it's just it's not impossible. It's just it's great if you do. It's just much easier if you do. And I think meet all the casting directors you can. Like, it can't hurt. And I'm not saying spend all your money at every random, on camera class in town. I try to make myself available in a lot of ways that cost no dollars, and there are, I would say most casting directors do. And that is one very positive benefit of social media is like you can find us and know who we are and know what our face looks like in a way that you couldn't before. So it really can't hurt to find us and know us, especially since you you want to be somebody I know more than you want the greatest agent in the world. I'm biased, but that's what I think is, I always have a mental list in my head, or, you know, whenever I start a project with a director and, we've hashed out the breakdown and whatnot, and I'm starting to collect auditions on my end. I know you had this ready to go for me. It's like most directors are going to say, oh, and by the way, can we make sure we get these 5 people on tape for this? And it's not always like celebrities. A lot of the times it's just like actors, actors you've worked with before, people that made an impression on you, like on your last project. It's like, okay, well, I want to make sure we get them in the mix for this. That's something a rep can't do for you. That is something only you can do for you, is make sure, anytime you have the opportunity to work, you are being excellent to everyone. You're being excellent on set. You are, showing up prepared, doing your shit well. That puts you on that mental short list for both me, because I have that, for actors I know like are always going to show up and make me look good. That's an ongoing list I just have in my brain. Oh, well, sure, I'm always going, I'll throw out a name. I will always make sure Lucy Walters is on the list. I will always make sure Oli Haskavy is on the list, because like they do no wrong for me. They've always consistently done excellent work. And that's, they have reps. Of course they do. That's not something a rep can do for you, though. And that doesn't go for just casting directors, like everybody on a set, because I can't tell you how many times, like in the 11th hour, we need an actor to come play a role tomorrow. And I put my head together with the director and the producer, and they're like, oh yeah, this person from our last project who was so awesome. Let's get him in. It's like, that's work. That's work you got yourself for being fantastic to work with.
Super hard turn. What do you think of the Oscars announcing that they're going to have a casting category in 2026?
It makes me so happy. Will I ever win it? Probably not, because typically movies that are made for $6 don't go to the Oscars, but I am thrilled. I'm thrilled. It is something we have been working toward for a long time. And I say we very selfishly, but it is a lot of casting directors for a long time who came before me, who have been working toward that. And I will now plug in Casting By. It is an extraordinary documentary. If you've never seen it, you have to watch it. When I decided to go into casting when I was in college, I sat my whole family down and made them watch it. um, so, but it's fantastic, and it shines like such a light on all the work we do that you don't know we do, and how much of a creative process it is. Like, I know it's like, sure, I'm not going to deny that so much of it like is administrative, but what I like so much about working with you, Dean, and so many of my other clients is like, I'm seen as a creative collaborator. And that's how I see myself. Like, for me, I think there's a lot of creative work in what I do. Like building idea lists for roles is like my favorite thing to do. Is just like dreaming up all of the different versions of this character, all of the different ways this film could come to life. Like that's life-giving to me. And it's very creative. It's a skill, and it's also very creative. And yeah, it's awesome to finally see that being recognized at this level.
If you could impart one piece of advice to a filmmaker about casting, what would it be?
I think it goes back to something I said earlier, which is you never know who's going to love your work. And if you believe in your project and that it's worthwhile, put it out there. You just don't know who else is going to love it. And I know that's scary, but it could be the best decision you've ever made.
That's a great place to end it, I feel like. If somebody wanted to find you and your work, where would they go?
So my website is alliebeanscreative.com, and I'm on Instagram at alliebeanscasting. Yeah, I'm very online, perpetually online. So it's not hard to find me from one of those two places.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was so fascinating. I mean, I could talk about casting all day, I feel like.
No, I love it.
I would highly recommend that everybody talk to a casting director for your projects. Not only will they make your life easier, but they'll also elevate the quality of the project. I want to thank Allie for chatting with me. Do yourself a favor and check out her website. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one.